It's getting quiet. Good morning. Welcome to the 27th annual Walk to the Hill for Civil Legal Aid. Or actually, more accurately this year, the 27th annual Walk, Ski, Sled, Snowshoe, Slog, Stumble, Slip, Skate, or Ice Climb to the Hill for Civil Legal Aid. My name is Louis Tompros, and I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the Equal Justice Coalition. I cannot thank you all enough for being here. It is wonderful to see the Great Hall filled with lawyers, law students, advocates, and friends from across the Commonwealth. We are here for the same purpose: to ensure that in Massachusetts, equal justice under law is not just a promise carved in marble, but a reality lived by every person. The Equal Justice Coalition is a Commonwealth-wide alliance. We bring together the funders of civil legal aid, the organizations doing the day-to-day work, our statewide and local bar associations, private law firms, corporate legal departments, and students at the law schools training the next generation. Our partnership has just one goal: making sure that everyone in crisis has the lifeline of a lawyer. Civil legal aid is a lifeline for those in crisis, and today, the need for civil legal aid is enormous. We are living in a time of considerable strain, a challenging economy, deep cuts to federal programs, and rising costs for housing, child care, and basic necessities have made life precarious for far too many of our neighbors. Today, more than 325,000 people in Massachusetts live in extreme poverty. These are older adults, parents, and children, veterans, workers, and families, our friends and our neighbors. These are folks who cannot afford a lawyer and cannot begin to navigate the legal system alone. Civil legal aid is their lifeline. It keeps them from falling into homelessness, losing their income, or risking their safety. And investing in civil legal aid works. Last year, MLAC-funded legal aid organizations secured an estimated $113.5 million in economic benefits for the Commonwealth and its residents, a meaningful increase over even the prior year. This means more income maintained, more homes saved, more medical coverage preserved, more stability for families. But even with those successes, the need for civil legal aid continues to outpace the capacity. Even today, over 40% of eligible residents are turned away from the civil legal aid help they need, not because of ineligibility, but simply because of insufficient resources. That is, thousands of people confronting eviction, domestic violence, loss of benefits, or dangerous working conditions, forced to face the legal system alone. We can fix that. In fact, this is one of the few systemic problems for which the solution is clear, direct, and proven. To serve more people in crisis, we just need more funding. That is why the Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation has asked the legislature to allocate $53 million for MLAC in the fiscal year 2027 budget. And that's what we're asking you to tell your representatives and senators. Fund civil legal aid at $53 million. Now, I am not a legal aid lawyer. I do mostly patents. And every year, someone asks me, why do we bring hundreds of lawyers to the State House to do this advocacy work? Well, there are actually three reasons we bring so many lawyers who are not legal aid lawyers here to do this work. The first is, as lawyers and as law students, you understand the problem and you understand the solution. You know that in most civil cases, those involving housing, domestic violence, employment, education, immigration, there is no right to counsel. Many people, including some people in government in this very building, don't understand that. You do, and you can explain that that is why civil legal aid funding is necessary. Second, as lawyers, you have access and you have credibility. Your legislators will listen to you. You're not asking for anything to benefit yourself. Advocating for civil legal aid is a way for you to use your privilege to ask them to do the right thing for the most vulnerable people in our communities. And third and finally, as lawyers, you know how to make an argument. You've been trained for this since 1L year. Today, you get to use your legal skills for the public good, to make the case for funding civil legal aid. Over the next few minutes, you're going to hear a variety of voices that I hope will inspire you in your advocacy. And then at the end of this program, I hope you'll stay for photos and for lunch. But please don't just stay for photos and for lunch. Visit your legislators. Go to their offices, sign in, tell them why you're here, explain why legal aid matters, why $53 million in funding is essential, and why the Commonwealth must continue its leadership in access to civil legal aid. It is because civil legal aid is a lifeline, and today, more than ever, we cannot afford to turn away from our neighbors in crisis. Civil legal aid changes lives, and today, we are hoping that your advocacy can too. Now, before we move forward, we are honored today to be joined by many of our legislative champions and members of their staff. So I first want to thank the chairs of the Joint Committee on the Judiciary, Senator Lydia Edwards and Representative Michael Day. And also thank you to our sponsor in this room today, who happens to be my own Senator, Sal DiDomenico. We'd also like to welcome the offices of House Speaker Mariano, Representatives Robertson, Saunders, Bowen, and also Senators Payano and Collins. And we are joined in person by many of our representatives here today: Representative Paish, Sina, Rogers, Linsky, Livingstone, Kastner, Sabadosa, Badger, Connolly, Catalado, Moakley, and Decker. So please, let's give a warm round of applause for our legislative supporters. Thank you for your leadership and partnership. It is now my distinct honor to introduce the leaders of our co-founding organizations: Suma Nair, the president of the Boston Bar Association, and Michael Hayden, the president of the Massachusetts Bar Association.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this very cold, very messy Wednesday morning. You're here because access to justice matters. Civil legal aid matters. And right now, it's under real strain. For more than a century, the Boston Bar Association has believed that justice should not depend upon how much money you have, what language you speak, or where you come from. That belief has guided our advocacy, our partnerships, and our unwavering support for civil legal aid across Massachusetts. And for 27 years, we have manifested that support by standing alongside the MBA and MLAC as part of the Equal Justice Coalition that hosts Walk to the Hill. Our federal and state constitutions already reflect our founders' belief that the integrity of our legal system requires a right to counsel in criminal proceedings. But as our society has evolved, civil proceedings and the rights impacted by them have become more consequential. Civil legal aid is therefore not a theoretical abstract. It's not a nice to have in a society that values the rule of law. It is a tangible, profoundly practical, and immediately urgent need to have to ensure that our most vulnerable community members have access to basic necessities. It can mean the difference between remaining housed or becoming homeless, between having access to health care or suffering without treatment, between domestic safety and violence, between stability and crisis, between life and death. And the need is growing. Housing is the single greatest area of need. More than a third of civil legal aid cases involve housing. This at a time when rents are rising, subsidies are shrinking, and federal policy changes are creating confusion and fear. Families are being pushed to the edge, and civil legal aid is often the only thing standing between them and eviction. As president of the Boston Bar Association, this work is very personal to me. I served for years on the board of On the Rise, a women's day shelter and advocacy program in Cambridge. I saw firsthand what happens when justice is accessible and what happens when it is not. I have seen lawyers step up through public service and pro bono work to protect people at their most vulnerable. And I know that without strong public support and investment, this system cannot keep up. That is why our partnership with the civil legal aid community and MLAC is so critical. MLAC provides the funding and infrastructure that make a statewide legal aid network possible. This network reaches nearly every city and town in Massachusetts. It handles tens of thousands of cases each year, and it delivers real results. Tens of thousands of cases each year include people being housed, stabilizing families, and we've demonstrated in 2 reports published by the BBA, literally saving public dollars. In a few minutes, you'll hear directly from someone who has benefited. But the reality is that demand is rising faster than resources can. That is why we are walking today for justice. To make one thing clear, civil legal aid is essential. It is a smart investment, and it must be funded at a level that meets the moment we are in. When we walk together, we show that the legal community is united, that we understand the stakes, and that we will continue to show up until access to justice is not an exception, it is the rule. And while the image of so many law students and lawyers walking together is impactful, do not forget that the most important thing you can do today is talk one-to-one with your own legislators to tell them personally how strongly you support civil legal aid funding. Thank you for being here. Thank you for walking. And let's take this message straight to our legislators.
Thank you, Suma. It's always such a privilege to hear you speak. We are in a moment in time, a moment in our democracy where it is imperative that we remember what is most important. Nobody in this building will argue that the Patriots in the Super Bowl is unimportant. We're all happy to see them there. But civil legal aid has to be a much greater priority. I'm Michael Hayden. I'm the president of the Massachusetts Bar Association. It's an absolute honor to be here with all of you for the Walk to the Hill for Civil Legal Aid. Thank you once again to the Equal Justice Coalition for bringing our legal community together to advocate for greater civil legal aid funding. Fiat Justitia, translated from the Latin, let justice be done. This has been the MBA's motto for 115 years, since the time when Louis Brandeis, Oliver Wendell Holmes, and Moorfield Story formed our association in 1911 because there was not a safe space for black lawyers, Jewish lawyers, and immigrant lawyers to collaborate. Advocating for equal justice for all remains a bedrock principle for our association and the motivation for our members to continue supporting the Equal Justice Coalition and to take part in this important Walk to the Hill event. The Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation is the hub that connects and funds legal aid organizations throughout the Commonwealth. Adequate funding for MLAC is essential to addressing the urgent civil legal aid needs of our most vulnerable Massachusetts residents. Without a lawyer, we know that these individuals and families face hopelessly confusing paperwork and court events where life-defining legal challenges involve housing, health care, family law, domestic violence, immigration, education, and other fundamental rights. Empirically, we know that civil legal aid reduces the impact of poverty and stabilizes low-income households. One resolved case can lead to a ripple effect for continued positive developments in a person's life. Stable housing can lead to more opportunities to find a dependable job. A stable job can help someone pay rent and medical bills. Legal aid organizations do tremendous work for thousands of Massachusetts residents every year, but they face their own operational hurdles, from rising inflation costs, increased overhead, organizational healthcare cost, to fast-growing demand for legal services that simply cannot be met. Policy changes at the federal level create additional challenges as organizations must pivot and adjust to maintain the resources that are available to allow them to keep their lights on. Obtaining desperately needed funding for civil legal aid organizations to bolster their resources, training, and workforce is the answer. But this can only happen with additional state funding, which is why we're all here today. To help bridge this justice gap, as you've heard, we're advocating for $53 million in state funding for MLAC in fiscal year 2027. Together, our collective voice and lobbying efforts on behalf of our fellow residents can and will make a tangible, positive difference in their lives. We know that civil legal aid works. Each year at Walk to the Hill, we hear inspiring stories from former civil legal aid clients who were able to overcome massive legal obstacles in their personal lives with the support of their civil legal aid attorneys. I look forward to hearing more of those stories today. Civil legal aid also benefits our Commonwealth. As Louis told you during his remarks, in fiscal year 2025, civil legal aid yielded an estimated $113.5 million in economic benefits for Massachusetts. Don't underestimate your importance to this process. Please talk to your elected officials. Thank them for their strong commitment to civil legal aid and remind them that the most important funding always lies ahead of us, where civil legal aid is needed most. Civil legal aid promotes the Massachusetts Constitution's promise for equal justice for all. John Adams wrote in Article 30 of the Declaration of Rights, "To the end, it may be a government of laws and not of men." For those in need of civil legal aid, this constitutional guarantee only works if they have access to lawyers who will represent them. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Suma, for your advocacy and your continued support. I'd also like to recognize three more legislative offices who I understand have joined us, the offices of Representatives Consalvo, Fluker-Reed, and Wiederhoven. Could we please give them a round of applause? A highlight of the Walk to the Hill every year is hearing from those who do the work and from those who benefit from the work. We are fortunate to have here today Jenny Chu, the Executive Director of the Children's Law Center of Massachusetts, Alyssa Schnur, a staff attorney at the Children's Law Center, and their client, Jen Fowler. Please give them a warm welcome.
Good morning. How are you all? I am very honored to be here today, and thank you all for coming out on the heels of this snowstorm to support civil legal aid. My name is Jenny Chow. I'm the Executive Director of the Children's Law Center. There we go. I'm a little short. As may be evident from our name, the Children's Law Center provides legal representation to children and youth. We firmly believe that every young person deserves a fair opportunity to achieve their own life goals, regardless of circumstance. After all, every child becomes an adult and will be the future of our Commonwealth. Clients of the Children's Law Center are navigating complex and often overwhelming legal challenges, often in multiple systems, often alone. This can mean whether or how a student attends school and if their right to a quality education is met. It means finding stability if a child is removed from their home, or especially in these unprecedented times, it can mean being able to remain in the US after arriving alone. And sometimes it can also mean all of the above. Continued support of civil legal aid allows Children's Law Center attorneys to stand beside our young clients, amplify their voices, and safeguard their rights. As you might imagine, in this current climate, our work has become exponentially harder, and there are many more children and youth who need civil legal aid than there is capacity. We do, however, persevere, and we do make inroads into intractable issues. And you're about to hear one such client's story. They were represented by attorneys Alyssa Schnur and Shruti Perry. And spoiler alert, there is a happy ending. So on behalf of all our civil legal aid partners across the Commonwealth, our gratitude for your presence and support here today, and in the continued investment in civil legal aid, and especially for your efforts to ensure that this vital work remains available for those in need. So I'm going to turn it over now to Attorney Alyssa Schnur to introduce our speaker, and thank you again for all your efforts in Walk to the Hill 2026.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alyssa Schnur, and I am a staff attorney at the Children's Law Center of Massachusetts. When Shruti and I started working with Jen Fowler and her son Dante, Dante had already been out of school for over a year because as a student with a disability, his school district could not meet his needs. Dante sat at home while he watched his twin brother go to school each morning, play with friends, and go to birthday parties, all things that Dante used to do. Jen knew Dante had a right to be in school and receive an education, but without legal assistance, she found it impossible to enforce Dante's rights on her own. While Jen was tirelessly advocating for Dante to be in school and attempting to educate Dante on her own from her living room, she was forced to leave her job of 20 years and was facing the risk of losing benefits that were crucial to her family. Today, Dante gets on the bus each morning to a school where he has friends and staff who celebrate him, and he receives the education to which he is entitled. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Jen Fowler to share her and Dante's story.
Good morning. I am honored to be here today, and thank you all for coming to the State House to support civil legal aid. I want to thank the Equal Justice Coalition and the Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation for giving me this opportunity to speak with all of you and share my story about my son Dante. In 2023, my family moved and I had to register Dante and his two brothers in a new school district. Upon registering all three for the upcoming school year, I explained Dante has autism and has been in a special program within the public school system since preschool. I went over his transfer in depth with the special education coordinator, who assured me they could accommodate Dante just as well as his last school district, if not better. I was thrilled to hear this, as Dante and myself really enjoyed his last school program. Dante requires extra support. He uses a speech device for all communication. The new school was not what we expected or promised. After 2 weeks of numerous trips to pick Dante up from school, due to what the school staff referred to as unmanageable behaviors, we had a meeting with the special education director. At this time, she recommended an out-of-district placement, to which I agreed. What I did not know was that there were no out-of-district placements at the time due to long wait lists and being short-staffed, that Dante would be sitting home. I requested in-home services such as tutoring, occupational therapy, speech therapy, anything I could, but I was told this was also not available. After this went on for months, I was now out of work. I had to take a leave from my employment to stay home with Dante. I have been employed for 20 years at this employer. Dante was home with no education or services, and most importantly, peers. I watched my once happy boy become sad all the time and continuously type on his speech device that he was broken. As a mom, this made me extremely sad, but it also infuriated me that this is how our district made him feel. I continuously reached out to the district, but kept being told the same thing. We put referrals out, but no word back. I called everywhere I could think of to get help with next steps. I now filed a problem resolution system complaint through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I had to do this on my own, and it is something parents or guardians can do without legal aid. I figured all of this out on my own with the help of Google. Once I filed this complaint and they found in my favor, the district had to come up with something. A residential program was now put on the table, meaning not living at home with his family as he had done for 10 years. I wasn't looking for a residential program. I just wanted a school. Then out-of-state schools were put on the table. Our family lives here in Massachusetts, so this is not an option for either him or I. I declined all of these offers and was told that I was not complying and I was being difficult. At this point, my son was home for over 6 months. I was furious that everyone I reached out to stated that this was illegal, but when I asked, well, what are you going to do about it? I was given no response, just silence. I was then told to seek legal help, which would be easy if I was working and could afford an attorney. I put my story out on social media asking for help. I got several numbers or emails to reach out to. All the attorneys wanted retainers that I couldn't afford. I finally got a number for the Children's Law Center of Massachusetts, but there was a wait list. At this point, my son was already on all kinds of wait lists. I will never forget the day I was picking up Dante's brothers from school. Dante was with me for the rides when Alyssa from the Children's Law Center texted me that we were at the end of our wait and set up a meeting date for me to come to their office. I literally cried, but this time happy tears, that I might get help for my son. I went to Alyssa's office and met her and Shruti, who stated they would both be taking Dante's case. After meeting them and seeing how compassionate they were hearing my story and immediately got to work, I felt like I had won the lottery. I also realized after the complaint was filed, we now needed to file for a Bureau of Special Appeals hearing. Again, I did not know anything about how to do any of this. These two women worked tirelessly for months. They helped comfort me and assured me that the district would need to do something and that my son could not sit home forever. They prepared me through this entire process. My case was not easy by any means. They checked in on my son more than the district ever had. If I did not receive civil legal aid and did not have these two incredibly amazing women supporting us and fighting for justice for my son, I have no idea where he would be today, but probably still home. It had now been 2 years with no school by this time. My son is now in a special education program. He started going on April 7th, 2025, and although he has an hour ride to and from school, he is happy. He loves the school, and the staff there have been amazing. He is thriving, and after 2 years of not being able to celebrate his birthday with peers, this October, he celebrated his 13th birthday with his peers and his friends. I can't thank Alyssa and Shruti enough for everything they have done and continue to do for Dante. The Children's Law Center and Civil Legal Aid gave me hope again. My son does not have a voice. I am his voice, and I will do anything for my son. These two women gave my son and I a voice for justice. I ask all of you today to talk to your lawmakers, your representatives, vote and advocate for more funding for civil legal aid, because there are so many people out there like myself and my son who truly benefited from this service. My son has a bright future ahead of him. Again, because of this help, a future he was and is entitled to. This never should have happened to him or any other child, but sadly, it happens more than you think. With legal aid, there is hope. You have a better chance of fighting this broken system. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to come out today and for allowing me to once again be Dante's voice.
Thank you so much, Jen, for sharing your and Dante's story. And thank you to the lawyers of the Children's Law Center for your life-changing work. To close us out, please welcome the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation, Lynn Parker.
Well, I have to say that story is a hard act to follow, but I will do my best. I just want to say good morning and welcome. I'm so grateful that you're all here today and that we were able to have the snowstorm arrive earlier in the week and they were able to be here today. Unfortunately, the snow piles and the cold temps are still with us, but that hasn't deterred us. We're here. So thank you so much for joining together today for this important event, Walk to the Hill in FY27. Thank you to Louis Tompros, Chair of the Equal Justice Coalition, and thank you to Suma Nair and Michael Hayden for being here. We so appreciate your leadership. We appreciate the long-standing partnership of the BBA and the MBA in supporting MLAC and funding for civil legal aid year after year. Your involvement truly makes all the difference. And thank you to the attorneys and staff who work at legal aid organizations across the Commonwealth. You are often unsung heroes, working tirelessly day in and day out to help clients in dire circumstances. And thank you to Jen Fowler and staff at the Children's Law Center for advocating on behalf of Dante and for finally getting Dante the legal assistance he needed and the education he deserved. MLAC is the largest funder of civil legal aid in the state. We provide funding to 6 regional legal aid organizations and 10 statewide organizations across the Commonwealth. The funding we receive through the state budget process is critical to legal aid organizations that MLAC supports, and that's why it's so important that you're here today. People with incomes at or below 125% of the poverty level qualify for civil legal aid. That means approximately $40,000 per year for a family of 4 and approximately $19,500 for an individual. Louis mentioned earlier the number of people who are now living in extreme poverty in Massachusetts. Approximately 38% of clients eligible for civil legal aid are living in extreme poverty. That's just over $16,000 a year for a family of 4 and approximately $7,800 for an individual. I just ask you to reflect for a moment and imagine how difficult it would be to live on incomes at those levels. Civil legal aid is the backbone of access to justice in our state. Legal aid organizations truly provide vital services to people with low incomes facing serious legal issues that impact their basic needs: housing stability, health care, unemployment benefits, family law, domestic violence, income maintenance, education, veterans benefits, elder services, immigration, and many, many other critical needs. People with low incomes are currently facing a host of challenges. Consumer debt and personal bankruptcies are rising. Skyrocketing increases in housing, food, healthcare, and utility costs, and the impact of rising inflation are making it more difficult than ever to make ends meet. Policy changes at the federal level have made affording basic needs even more precarious. MLAC-funded legal aid organizations do tremendous work. In FY25, they handled more than 46,800 cases, impacting nearly 99,000 people across the Commonwealth. 94% of cities and towns had at least one person with a case handled by legal aid. But behind every number is a person in crisis: a child suffering from chronic asthma, living in an apartment with mold and the landlord won't remove it; an aging senior afraid of losing her home as her medical bills pile up; a single mother who just lost her job and doesn't know how she'll make ends meet. Civil legal aid truly is a lifeline for Massachusetts residents in crisis. Due to the funding increases that the legislature has given us over the past several years, the turnaway rate of eligible residents who cannot receive services due to lack of resources has reduced to 40%. That's a notable reduction, and we are certainly proud and grateful for it. But an increase in funding in FY27 would help us to reduce the turnaway rate even further. You heard earlier from Louis Tomprose and Michael Hayden about the wonderful amount of benefits that were secured for the Commonwealth in FY25. In addition to those economic benefits, legal aid organizations also bring in lifetime benefits for many clients: Social Security disability benefits, supplemental security income, retirement and dependent care benefits, and long-time child care benefits. These benefits can significantly improve the lives of legal aid clients over the course of their lifetimes. We all know today that this is a difficult budget year, and that's why it's so important that you're here today and that you're here at Walk to the Hill to discuss the importance of legal aid. So again, we're asking you to please support our request for $53 million for MLAC and for civil legal aid. This increase won't meet all the existing need, but it will make a difference. So when you speak with your legislators today, not if, but when, please let them know that investing in legal aid is a wise investment. With increased funding, legal aid organizations can assist more people to navigate often very complicated areas of law. Increased funding will enable legal aid organizations to represent more clients across the state, and more people will have an attorney in their corner when they need it most. So please meet with your legislators today, voice your support, and talk about the importance of increased funding for civil legal aid in FY27. And thank you again so much for showing up today. It's wonderful to see so many people here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Well, folks, it's time. We need your help, and we need it now. Now is the time to visit your legislators' offices and to do the face-to-face advocacy that we know works incredibly well. If you don't know who your legislators are, you can scan the QR code in your folder, and you can find out. If you're having trouble finding a legislator's office, don't panic. This place is a maze. You are not alone in being completely and totally lost. Just ask for help. In your folders, you'll find a fact sheet and some talking points about the importance of civil legal aid. Feel free to use those. Feel free to use anything that you've heard today, and feel free to add from your own experience. The goal here is to educate our legislators and their staffs, because once they understand the importance and value of civil legal aid, it's impossible not to want to prioritize funding for it. Your legislator may not be there when you stop by. That's okay, and in fact, it can be a good thing. As those of us who work in law firms know, if you want to get something done, talk to the associate, not necessarily the partner. The aides in your legislator's office are very influential in the prioritization process, and they are the ones that you also need to educate about how important civil legal aid is. If nobody's there, there's a sorry I missed you card in your packet that you can leave behind. Offices often count up visits, so please do leave that behind if you're not able to talk to someone. And there's also a legislator response sheet in your packet. Please fill that out on your way back up for lunch, because that will help us keep track of who has been contacted, and it also helps us keep track of the firms and companies and schools that are the most engaged with legislative advocacy. And there is lunch. We hope you'll swing back by afterwards and have a sandwich after you've had a chance to talk to your representatives. I know you don't want to go back outside yet. It's cold, it's miserable. A great way to stay warm is to go right now to your legislators' offices and tell them why you're here. Thank you for being here, and thank you once again for walking to the Hill.